Hello, my name is Blair, for those of you who don't know, and in this video I'm going to be discussing a few related topics, one being feminism, the next being the men's rights movement, also the concepts of privilege, both male and female privilege, and just kind of my thoughts on all of those things. At the end, I'm definitely open to criticism, comments, and everything of the sort, so here we go. So just a heads up, I did write all of this stuff down because I am using it for a paper in school, but I did change the wording around to stuff that I would actually say out loud. So yeah, if I'm looking down, it's because I'm reading. So under the feminist storyline that's increasingly dominant over Western culture, media, and all the way up to government, there is a lot of talk of male privilege lately. So although I am an anti-feminist, I do concede that certain situations may lend certain privileges or benefits towards men. However, I feel like these instances are very much overstated, and the instances of female burden are very much also overstated. In fact, I think that female privilege is so much understated that some people believe that it doesn't even exist. Some people believe that men simply have benefits and women simply have burdens. I think this is completely false, and my life experiences, although anecdotal, I think are a good measure of that, for the simple fact that I am a transgender woman. This means I was born male and I identify and live my life as a woman. So not only did I transition into a body and role that is more personally desirable for me, but I also believe that I transitioned into a certain amount of privilege. It's not a popular opinion, it's not a politically correct opinion, but I've never been one for political correctness, so yeah. Having lived my life on both sides of the coin per se at different periods of my life, I think I definitely am in a position to critique the concept of privilege as it's perpetuated by feminist ideology. So I'll start off first with sort of the everyday cultural, routine benefits that women in the West enjoy, and then I'm going to go on to the more impactful institutional ways in which women are privileged. So you have to understand, I'm coming from this from the perspective of someone who's transgender, so at one point in my life, I didn't enjoy the privileges of being a woman, and now I am. So it's very much clear to me. It's kind of like day and night. I went from one to the other, so I feel like I can recognize them a lot easier than someone who maybe lived their entire life as a woman, or than a man who's judging how women experience culture. So there was a shift that happened in the way that the world interacted with me as I went further into my transition. Sort of the way that strangers interacted with me, the way I was treated, it all changed. It manifested in ways such as doors being held open for me, seats on public transportation being surrendered instantly, really. The term ladies first is definitely something that's actually implemented. It's not just a phrase. There was one time I was getting off the train. I had traveled across country, and when a man dared to try to exit the train before me and get his luggage off before me, he was pretty much instantly yelled at by two conductors who said something along the lines of, "Where are your manners, ladies first?" And I was allowed to get off the train before him. And while these are sort of frivolous examples, I do think there's something worth noting about the quality of life that women experience based on operating through a society that's just kinder to them, that's just more polite to them, that's just more welcoming of them. And that's not to say that I was mistreated when I presented as a male and the world perceived me as a male, but I was definitely overlooked. I was expected to sort of maintain my own comfortability. No one went out of their way to make me feel welcome or comfortable. I think this is worth noting, even if they are small things, because over the course of a woman's life, I do think it affects their quality of life. You leave the house and people are smiling at you and opening doors for you and genuinely concerned with your well-being. It does make you a happier person. I do think this is a privilege. So with those less impactful examples set aside, I'll now discuss sort of the larger institutional fronts in which we see and can observe female privilege at play. The first front is definitely the judicial system. Men receive more than double the amount of prison time than a woman for committing the exact same crime. And to add insult to injury, if you're a woman, you're more than twice as likely to completely avoid incarceration altogether just because you're a woman. This is a heinously large gap. If avoidance of punishment for breaking laws is not a privilege, I really don't know what is. So with myself being a computer science major, this next example is something that I will definitely reap the benefits of in the future. Women are selected over men in STEM fields for faculty positions within universities by a 2-to-1 margin. This is a really huge margin, and it represents a really big bias in hiring processes. These positions are routinely pushed to be filled by women, and this is definitely a privilege. Another huge privilege is the physical safety and protection that women are afforded in the public sphere. While women and feminists in particular are shouting from the rooftops about a war on women and ending violence on women, men are in fact the primary victims of street violence, robbery, homicide, and nearly all crime. What I've noticed is that women are provided a sort of social safety net. Not only do we benefit from the age-old stigma of men hitting women, perfect strangers tend to rush to the aid of a woman in duress. We definitely see this exemplified in the many social experiment videos that are available on YouTube. They depict sort of a man in a threatening and violent situation, and pretty much always strangers remain bystanders. They do nothing, they don't intervene. But when the roles are reversed, women are definitely helped by perfect strangers. People run to their assistance, and the violence is thwarted, even though it's not a real threat of violence, but you guys know that. So there is one caveat I have to address while we're in the midst of this conversation. I am transgender, so that does affect the rate at which I may or may not experience violence. Violence does beget trans people at alarmingly high rates. But I am lucky enough that I can enter most public spaces, and the world does interact with me as a woman, not as a trans person or as a man. So I do think that I am in a position to discuss female privilege as it's afforded to cis women. A representation of my interests within the media, public consciousness, is definitely another privilege that I have as a woman. There's an onslaught of issues, barriers, and situations that men find themselves in where these issues are never vocalized, and anytime they are sort of shut down and dismissed as either unimportant, fake, or just men complaining and being pussies. Little to no support is ever offered for these issues. So anytime you hear about men's rights, men's issues, the conversation's definitely, it's completely disregarded. The truth is that men make up 80% of suicides, nearly half of all domestic violence victims. More men in the US are raped, that is when you factor in prison statistics. 77% of homicide victims, 93% of workplace deaths, 88% of homeless individuals are male, and they're constantly screwed over in child custody and alimony cases. So these numbers definitely seem unfamiliar to most people. I know they definitely were to me when I started researching all of these things, but the reason they seem so unfamiliar and maybe even not so believable is because feminism does not even allow the conversation to be had. These issues are never discussed. I thought about it a lot, and I think the main issue with feminism is that it observes and approaches all social issues with a gynocentric lens. Every issue is kind of seen as a woman's issue, and if a man is affected, it's kind of a byproduct of misogyny and the treatment of women. I think this is definitely intellectually dishonest. I think men and women are simply different biological and cultural entities, and of course there's things that men experience. The truth about gender is that it's not just a person's cultural and biological assembly, but it's also a set of experiences. I think that gender comes with a mixed bag of burdens and benefits for both genders. I think that women have certain benefits and burdens, and men have certain benefits and burdens. So the feminist narrative that men are inherently privileged while women are inherently victims of this privilege and this oppression is intellectually dishonest at worst and painfully stupid at best. I never really did identify as a feminist even before my transition, but I can staunchly now say that I do not subscribe to feminist ideology. And the reason I can say that is because because of my life experience. My life did not become worse when I transitioned. My life just became different. My life in many ways became better personally because I'm happier now, but it didn't socially, politically, and economically become worse. So how can I really say that women are oppressed when I've lived life on both sides of the coin, and things aren't better or worse, they're just different. So those are my thoughts on the topics at hand, and I definitely want anyone who disagrees with me to comment, because I am open to people disagreeing with me. I like having my views challenged, and I am willing to change my mind if I'm proven wrong. So